John, I've received a huge number of emails and messages from our viewers. Everybody was super excited about last week's trip to the Barringer Crater. If people missed that, they can still see it by becoming sponsors on subscribestar.com/IamJohnCullen, patreon.com/IamJohnCullen, or subscribestar.com or patreon.com/crowdsourcethetruth. And you know, John, when people sponsor the show, exercise their right to access this direct-to-viewer sponsorship program, cutting out the corporate middleman, it really helps keep independent news alive, and it keeps this show going. How are you today, John?
I'm doing really well, Jason. You're looking good on the road. I love the Vermeer lighting. Really very effective. Very effective. And you might get a little Rembrandt effect there as well. So when you do Vermeer and Rembrandt lighting at the same time, it's real. You can tell you went to NYU film school. So very impressive.
I like what you're doing with your set there today. Everything is looking good, and we've got a lot to discuss. Where do you want to begin?
Well, the title of this week's show, do the facts seem to matter anymore or not? So I think we're going to take a closer look at some of the developments in this past week and see if the developments match up with the data, and if not, why not? So it's a little bit strange. Why don't we go to the deck and we'll show the audience a couple slides before we go to the patron-only show. But for those of you who are not yet patrons, I mean, the last 3 weeks, we went walking around Las Vegas, right, around the 5th anniversary of the shooting. We went out to Lake Mead to find out that a tremendous amount of the water's gone. And then we went to Barringer Crater to see what happens when these things do hit the earth. And so it's been a jam-packed couple of weeks here.
Yeah. Lots of exciting productions. And again, people can see that on Patreon and Subscribestar if they're not yet sponsors. I feel very good about the videos that we've done over the past couple of weeks, John. They were exciting. They were informative, exotic locations. A lot of people had never seen that Barringer Crater before, and it was very cool visiting it. But this week we're going to get back. Sorry?
A lot of people have never seen Echo Beach at Lake Mead. We drove 40-something miles to get to Echo. That was not around the corner from the dam by any stretch of the imagination. We drove and drove and drove to get out there. A lot of people have never seen that. True. So we've been to some interesting spots along your Ghost Town USA tour version 2.0, right? Exciting.
Exactly.
The 2.0 version of the Ghost Town USA. So
thank you for participating.
Oh, it's a pleasure. Are you kidding? It's a blast. So this evening, what I've done is I sort of looked at some of the top stories, and right now on Twitter, I guess I just broke through the 65,000 or 6,500 followers, something like that. So that's good news. But if you go ahead to the next slide, the quote there, I changed the quote, and this is a quote from Galileo of Galilee, and he famously said, probably in Latin, "All truths are easy to understand once they are discovered. The point is to discover them." And what I'm finding is that's no longer true anymore. That's no longer true. So you can have evidence of things and put evidence of things on the table in front of people, and despite looking at the evidence, too hard to accept, and they say that sounds like one of those, what's it called, Aranon, or Vianon, or Exanon, or whatever the hell they call that thing, and people say, well, that sounds like Aranon. And I'm like, what? It's a picture. What are you talking? So we're going to look at that tonight. So let's jump ahead to the next slide. And so this is sort of the big story in the news, is that the CDC, the Center for Disease Control, has a panel that gets together to vote. and they voted unanimously to add these COVID shots
Oh.
to the recommended vaccine schedule for children for 5 years old and up. So this will now most likely have some sort of implications at the state level for schools,
But
because now kids.
hasn't Robert Kennedy Jr. revealed to us that people at the CDC, or actually the CDC itself, gets the majority of its funding from the pharmaceutical, or is that the FDA? I think the CDC, they're getting funding from the pharmaceutical company. No, the Kennedy book goes into great detail as to how people from the CDC go and oversee the work being done by these pharmaceutical companies, and they're on basically contract, getting paid to do that. And there seems to be a financial motive for some people at the CDC to do these things.
Imagine that. So let's give them the benefit of the doubt and assume that even though there might be the appearance of impropriety, that there really isn't, and that let's just assume, for the sake of argument, just to play devil's advocate, that Bobby Kennedy Jr. is maybe a little alarmist on this, but really there's no there. Let's just give him the benefit of the doubt and see. And because what we're going to do is we're going to look at the data. I'm going to say, okay, let's just assume for a second they're not on the take. Let's assume they don't get royalties for this stuff, right? Let's assume that there is no conflict of interest. And then what does the data say? And what are they looking at? So, yeah, again, I love him. And I think his wife is hysterical. I think she's a riot.
Yeah, she is.
She's one of the best comedic actresses, I think, of my generation. The stuff I've seen, she's fabulous. So her and
Curb Your Enthusiasm.
Pardon?
Yeah, Curb Your Enthusiasm is hilarious.
And she was a fabulous foil to Larry David. So hysterical, perfect foil to him. All right, let's jump ahead to this next slide that we have here in the deck. So the CDC panel votes to say, okay, we're going to recommend these things for kids. And sort of the frustration that I have in the title of the show here is, well, what about the facts? Does anybody want to talk about the facts anymore? Do we want to bring up actual data, actual facts, actual numbers? And what seems to happen when I do? What seems to happen? Because it seems like I can silence a room faster than a gorilla. Like I seem to have this ability with these numbers that I keep bringing to the table to silence the room. So let's jump ahead. Here's a great room silencer. So if you guys want to kind of not get invited to parties anymore, bring a copy of this, print this out, bring it to the next cocktail party you're invited to, the next wine and cheese gathering, and share this with a couple people, and I guarantee you'll never get invited again. So this compares people that died with COVID in blue and people that died from fentanyl in green. All right.
Holy crap. That's in the same time frame?
This is in the same time. Well, let's take a look. So if you go up top, so let's be real specific. You go up top, it says COVID-19 deaths, 15 to 45 years old, January 2020 until present day. So this is 15 to 45-year-old people. We've got 43,834 people that died from fentanyl. It's 18 to 45 years old, January 2020 until only December 2021. So there's 10 months of data.
So there's a lot more
that we don't have on the fentanyl, and the fentanyl is green.
Wow. Still way higher. Almost twice as much.
And we stopped counting the fentanyl 10 months ago. So, but this doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. Once upon a time, it might have mattered. Back when we used to do engineering, right? And we had slide rules and people knew how to use things like that and people did math. But now people look at that and say, it's just because it's bigger doesn't mean it's more.
Yeah,
and that's the kind of logic.
Don't seem to mean as much as people's
kind of
feelings,
weird. Right. So this is what we're going to get into more deeply in the patron only hour is, well, what are these facts? What does the CDC say? What does the WHO say? And why does that not seem to matter anymore? Or why is that irrelevant? So right now, if you go to the next slide real quick, it's important to just update everybody on what's going on in the world, because the world kind of matters, right? So right now in Germany, all hell's breaking loose. What does that mean? Germany has more cases of COVID in the last 4 weeks than any country on earth.
Whoa,
More cases in the last 4 weeks, right? 2.2 million cases in the last 4 weeks, more than in the United States.
Wow.
So they are leading about 80 million, 82, 85 million, something like that. Somewhere in the 80s.
A lot of sauerkraut.
That's a lot of sauerkraut. A lot of very good beer and great engineering. So let's go to the next slide, because the next slide is the United States of America. Woohoo! Right? So we lead the world in deaths. Well over 1 million dead, right? We have far fewer cases in the last 4 weeks, but we have almost 11,000 dead. So to Germany's less than 3,000. Right. So you see how good we are at this? So with fewer cases, we've got more dead.
That's efficiency.
Isn't that great? Right. It's like we don't need as many players on the field, and we'll score more points. That's how good we are in America.
It's like
right?
Elon Musk's plan for Twitter. Fire 75% of them.
Right. This is why we carry our heads so high. All right, so let's go to the next slide. Before we go Patreon only, I want the audience to see this. This is a doozy. So this I just kind of want to kick back in my chair, put my feet up, and just watch the circus. You've got Johns Hopkins telling the world with their definitive map that 15,547 people died in China. But on the right-hand side, you've got the World Health Organization telling everybody, no, it's 27,666 people that died in China. Now, these are
One
just
of them
as of
get kicked off of YouTube for misinformation.
Right? I mean, well, but how does this happen? Just nobody seems to care. Nobody seems to care about, well, is either, clearly they both can't be a fact. You can't say, no, Jason, that's a fact. There are 15,547 people dead in China, and there's 27. That can't be a fact. Both numbers can't be true. But nobody cares.
Johns Hopkins identifies as 5/9 of something.
There you go. Now, that's different. Now, if they had an explanation and they said, well, there's a rational explanation because we don't really count these people as whole people, I said, oh, okay, right. Well, now we understand your mathematics. It's like influenza burden, right? D to the H over 1 divided by the square root of how many bedpans we used. So this, to me, is stunning. Nobody cares. What are the facts here? And let's say the WHO is right, and it's 27,666. Let's go with that number. Jump ahead to the next slide. So if that is the case, and let's say Johns Hopkins is just completely wrong. Let's say En Shengdong failed at abacus. Let's just say he can't do math. En Shengdong can't add up and 15,000. It's just wrong. It's just wrong. So let's say the WHO is right, 27,666. Well, that means simply that Tennessee has more dead. New Jersey has more dead. J.B. Pritzker in Illinois has more dead. DeWine in Ohio has more dead. Pennsylvania. How do all these states have more people dead than China? And that doesn't matter. That doesn't matter. Nobody cares. They've all got more dead than Nigeria. They've all got more dead than Ethiopia. But they've got more dead, Jason, than like Pakistan. They've got more dead than Bangladesh. How does Pennsylvania have more people dead than Bangladesh? Right? So, yeah, but nobody cares. It doesn't matter. But it doesn't matter.
Each of these videos, though, normally gets us dinged. The thing that the audience might not realize, John, is that the way we do the show is that you just send me these slide decks. I don't preview them. I don't tell you what to do or what to take out. This deck is likely to get this video, if not removed.
No. This is official data. Now, how do we get in trouble because Johns Hopkins and no. Johns Hopkins and the WHO are having an argument. It's like we're watching Tom Brady and Gisele's divorce here. It's like this, so you got Tom Brady on the left and you got Gisele on the right. And Tom Brady says it's 15,547. And Gisele says, no, it's 27,666. How the hell are we going to get in trouble? It's their divorce. We've got nothing to do with this, right? It's their argument. We're just reporting on it and saying, you idiots can't come up with a number, and nobody seems to care. I just find that kind of fascinating. It's like nobody cares. Nobody cares. Anderson Cooper doesn't care. He doesn't care. And then when you look at the states, again, when you say, so wait a second, so Pennsylvania has more dead than Bangladesh, that's not a theory. That's the CDC and the WHO is telling us this. So I just find it fascinating that nobody cares. It's like the facts just don't matter. It's weird. It's just bizarre.
But it's happening all over the place, John. It's happening with laptop evidence. It's happening with federal lawsuits. You know, there's empirical evidence right in front of everybody's face. But rather than, see, the way you and I don't mean to speak for you, but I think we know each other well enough that we can anticipate certain responses. Somebody would come to us with a claim, an allegation, an effort to refute something that we've said on the show. We would examine their claim. We would examine the associated evidence, and no matter how difficult to believe it was, if the evidence was solid and, you know, we might take a real careful, skeptical look at it, but if somebody showed us empirical evidence of something that directly contradicted something that we've said in the past, we would not only accept that evidence, we would go back to the beginning of the germ of the hypothesis and figure out where we went wrong and how this piece of evidence fits in. Other people don't do that. They just say, I don't like your conclusion, so I'm going to completely ignore your evidence and just not talk about it.
I had to do that before, and I hated it. I have to say I hated it. So I was challenged by this kook, Ron Maroon or something like that. Some color is I don't remember the last name. It was like a color like maroon or something. Ox blood. Maybe it was Ron Oxblood or something. Said those aren't helicopters; those are jets, referring to some of the work I was doing 5 years ago. And so I had to sit down and go through it with a fine-tooth comb, and admitted that a couple of the sightings were false positives. I screwed up. But that doesn't, you can't throw the baby out with the bathwater, is the saying.
Exactly.
Right? So that doesn't mean that every one of the sightings was wrong. And I did videos where I said, these are jets, not helicopters. But there were a whole bunch of new helicopter sightings that I found going through it with a fine-tooth comb that bolstered the case even further. So,
right.
Sometimes to go back and revisit your own work, you find more things, and that's exactly what happened in this case. So let's jump ahead a couple more slides before we go patron only and we dig deeper into this. There's just a couple real high level things I can show the audience. They're straight from the CDC. So this development of the CDC recommending that they put this inoculation on the schedule for school-age kids isn't really that new a thing. In other words, a year ago, they recommended the inoculation for kids 5 to 11 years old. So it's not like this is a new development. Right now, they're recommending that it gets added to a list of things like the MMR vaccines and all this other stuff for kids right in this age group. And this is, of course, where Bobby Kennedy Jr. has done a tremendous amount of work and has Dr. Mikovits and a whole bunch of other people on this topic. And that's why, quite frankly, I don't get that involved in this. There's a whole bunch of people who got this covered, know way more about this stuff than I do. They don't need me for this. So again, like Steve Kirsch, he's deep into that stuff. They don't need my help. What the hell do they need my help with that for? But if you jump ahead to the next slide, this is the stuff I think I've been doing. It's kind of like when we spoke to J.J. Couey, and he's like, I'm good on a microscope. Give me a mouse brain and a microscope, and there's not a whole lot of guys, better than J.J. Couey. And so with me, I keep looking at the CDC data and saying, well, let me just kind of provide perspective. That's all. Let's just look at the CDC data and chart it in a manner that we can understand what's going on. So, for example, what you're looking at here is New York City. The big blue pie chart, is showing all the people in New York City that died with COVID. Right? 95% of them had on average 4 comorbidities, and 36 of those people were kids.
1/1000th.
So it's from 0 to 17 years old. So this isn't even school age kids. This is all the children from birth to 17 in New York City, 36. Okay. Now, if we look at this same age group, in the upper right, you've got a green pie chart. And what the green pie chart is showing you is those 36 kids are the 2% wedge. The green is deaths from all causes in New York City for kids this age. All right, so kids 0 to 17, we've got almost 1,800 kids that died from nothing having to do with COVID. And then we got 36.
Car crashes, whatever.
Yeah, whatever. I mean, whatever the kids died from. Suicides, drownings, things of that nature. But nothing having to do with COVID. So 36 kids died with COVID. But 1,800 died from other things, meaning COVID is accounting only for 2% of the deaths. But I don't think the parents in New York City are using this argument. The argument they're using is, after you give the inoculation, here's all the bad things that happen. To me, that's kind of too late. I like the argument that says, what the hell do I need it for if only 36 kids have died in all of New York City, and we know that 95% of those kids had 4 comorbidities? Is it really necessary? And what is it necessary for? To prevent what again? What are we trying to prevent?
Yeah.
That's all. So let's jump
ahead.
ahead.
I don't know that we've yet seen a comprehensive study of. I mean, we can't really talk about this on YouTube. We're getting into dangerous territory.
That's why I don't want. That's why I just want to stick to the numbers. Stick to the numbers. So just stay.
That doesn't even matter because YouTube. I mean, the subject of our show tonight has to do with empirical facts versus what people like social media companies want to be facts. And we've got just about 2 minutes left here on YouTube, John. We're going to be able to get much more in-depth on these topics and more when people join us at 7:30 p.m. Eastern on subscribestar.com/IamJohnCullen, patreon.com/IamJohnCullen, and subscribestar.com and patreon.com/crowdsourcethetruth. Take us out with a final word here, John.
Well, when we go to the patron-only section, I'm kind of toying with setting up a Jeopardy game show send-up mock-up. And so we've got a question or two that's sort of the question is the answer, and the answer is the question. And we're going to cue up some Jeopardy music here, and sort of a tribute to Alex Trebek. I guess he passed away. So we'll do this as a tribute to Alex. And what I want to look at is, again, some more of these numbers. And I want to put this all in perspective to see, are the decisions that are being made by the administration consistent with the data coming from the same administration?
Yeah, and we'll be looking into that for sure. I definitely want to thank the people who sponsor the show and make every single episode possible, certainly make this really fun and informative road trip possible. I don't want to talk about where I'm going next. A lot of people have been asking me to let them know if I'm in their town, etc. I mentioned it yesterday on the live stream in Austin after I left the Gigafactory. I told you about that, right? We'll talk about that offline. But anyway, we'll be back in just 5 minutes. Please join us on Subscribestar and Patreon. And thanks so much to everybody out there who's sponsoring the show. Really appreciate you guys. And we'll be back. Thanks for watching.